very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Yahola Tiger.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the, what is this? the 12th episode of the War Cry podcast. I'm your host, Yahola Tiger. Just chilling, on a dare I say, brisk morning, noon, whatever time it is. But I appreciate everybody listening. Like I said, we hit 1K in total audio listens, which that's amazing. The next goal is obviously 2,000 and 3,000. Let's see if we can get up to 10K. That'd be awesome. So this is going to be the first episode in a double episode kind of rollout that I'm doing for this week. So this is episode 12. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about Mike Wooley and his famous Bigfoot encounter. I'm also going to tell, different stories and things that's happened to myself or family members and people like that, or stories that I've heard from people telling me. And so where this story takes place, and I cannot for the life of me, and I tried to look this up and I can't find it. I want to say it's in the Carolinas area, Tennessee, North Carolina, that area. So Mike Wooley had been hunting this part of land for a while, but he only had hunted it. I mean, he had over the course of a span of years he's hunted this thing, but he's only hunted it like 5 times in total. And he usually, when he does hunt this, he does it usually in the morning time. Well, then he had some stuff come up on this day, and I want to say the date that he went out on his encounter was like maybe in February, I believe. Anyways, but so he had some stuff that he had to do during the day. So he was like, I'm gonna go out and hunt in the evening time, which he's never done at this property. Well, on this property, there's only one way in, one way out, and the road is one of those old logging roads that's very, very narrow. And when you go to a certain point in the road, there's only one spot where you can turn around, especially if you're in a big truck. And unfortunately, Mike Wooley was in a big truck that day. So every time that he hunted that property, he always at that little turnout spot, he would basically turn around and back his truck all the way back up until the end of the road. And he was kind of not really expecting anything, especially in the evening times, because he didn't really think that he would get anything because it was rutting season. Things like I said, I'm not a deer hunter or anything, but he in that area he noticed that in the evening times it was more kind of tough to get something. Well, so he goes down there, backs his truck up, and he gets out, and he had this tree stand that basically it was like 2 poles into the ground, and it was like a triangle basically. So it kind of wrapped around the tree, but it was like next to the tree, and basically the stand, about 10 foot off the ground, and with a ladder and all that stuff. So like one of those more kind of older school type of deer stands. And so he's sitting there, and he's been there maybe 5 minutes, and he notices a doe come up, like running really fast, and is underneath the deer stand. And he looks down and he realizes that the deer was sweating, it was just run. It was wore out, it had been being chased for a while. And he saw the sweat, and the doe was panting. And he thought that was kind of strange, but then he also kind of realized too, like I mentioned before, it was rutting season, And so he's kind of like, well, maybe there was a big buck after her, or maybe there was multiple bucks after her. So he's sitting there and he's kind of looking, and all of a sudden he hears, and it was almost like he called it almost like a freight train, but kind of, like something was coming their way through, through the thick brush. And the path so there's a path that gets to that stand, but like all around the path, it's all like really tall trees and briar, like really like 4-inch, briar, like stickers. He said basically if any man went through there, he'd be all cut up and be in bad shape. And so he looks up and he sees this black kind of shape making its way. It's hiding kind of behind this little small tree. And so he's looking. He's like, "What the hell is that? Like what is that?" And he didn't think to look through his scope, but he kind of was watching it, And next thing he knows, this creature jumps, literally no running start. And this is how he explained it: no running start. It didn't use the tree to bounce off. He said it jumped 20 feet to this bigger tree that was off the way, because this just game trail was kind of a wider game trail, and it jumped to this other big, really big tree. And he's like, we're sitting here watching this thing do this. Well, the doe is still underneath the tree, and the whole time, and this, by the way, this counter lasted about 15 minutes. And what kind of gets me kind of spooked out was when he finally decided to pull the scope up. What he saw was basically a Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And when he put his scope on the face of this thing, he said it looked human. Like it looked legitimately human. And in his mind, he starts thinking of like, okay, is this feral people? Like, did the circus get out? Like the circus, like, that's so funny. I always hear that, like, kind of excuse where, oh, it's just the circus. You heard about those monkeys that got loose. Like, all right. But yeah, he started going through it, and he's like, well, he said, let me take let me really hone in on this thing, because he was going to shoot this thing because he wasn't sure what it was, but he said it looked too human. And so he had kind of, like I said, he had really started scoping this thing out. And he was describing in the interview, and then I've read an article about this, that the eyes were like solid black. Like he could barely see any white, or if he couldn't remember if he could see any white, but it was basically black eyes on this thing. He said the nose didn't looked human, like it had a human looking nose. The teeth were kind of squared off, like not like how chimpanzees have kind of like canine teeth. Like it's like squared off like how humans have our teeth are. And he was like, man, he's like, this might be really human. Like I don't want to shoot this thing if it tries to attack me, because I could go to jail for murder. And he's real kind of contemplating. Well, at the time that he was using the scope, this thing started growling at him, and it was he equated it to like if 5 lions were like, the African lions were, growling at him and kind of, using their kind of the infrasound type, stuff that those animals use. He said it felt like a wind hit him, and it kind of disoriented him. And he said that he kind of, in his mind, it felt like time slowed down. And he was really almost like it was like everything was still, but he was still moving at normal, speed. And he said that this thing was growling, and you could see its teeth. It kept showing its teeth like a chimp would do, like when it does like its nose, like crinkles his nose. It kind of starts showing his teeth, and he said it had squared off teeth. So then he started looking at the body, and the body was completely covered in hair, and he basically just saw the broad shoulders, and it said it looked like a human head with a gorilla body. And this part of the story is literally is a nightmare for me. Like, so out of nowhere, he hears this whistle, and I've had family members tell me about this whistle. I've heard this whistle when I'm out in the woods. And it's not like a whistle, like a sharp one. It's like a faint whistle. It's really kind of like it carries, the wind carries the whistle through the woods. And he heard that. And he kind of looked over to his, off kind of behind him. And he's like, where did that whistle come from? Like that sounded like I've heard that before. All while this thing is in front of him, he looks, and he's like I said, he kind of looked, and then he looked back at the scope, and this thing's eyes moved kind of off to the right. So it'd be, so off to it's left, but his right. And he's like, okay, what was that? And all of a sudden, the creature whistled back to wherever that was coming from. And he's like, oh no, he's like, what is this, like like he started really kind of thinking like, man, are they communicating with each other? Like what's going on with that? Like there's another one. And when he goes kind of like looks back, and he looks back into the scope, that one that whistled back to the whistle was smirking at him. And it had this look like, you're in trouble, buddy. Like, it's over for you. And he said literally this thing was smirking at him. Like, he said he couldn't believe it because it was like it knew, like it had the upper hand. And it was going to get him. I got goosebumps telling that because, man, I can imagine just being up in that tree stand and seeing that thing, and it's looking at you like if Michael Jordan was looking at you and you're down 35 points, and Scottie Pippen and Kobe Bryant were all on the same team, Shaq were all on the same team, and you're like, dang, like, it's over for me. Like, they about to really beat me down. But, like, he said that, like, this thing just kept smirking at him. And he said it's real sinister. Like, it was like if you're looking at, like, something that's real hungry. Like, if you're real hungry, you look at something, you're like, man, I'm about to tear that up. And he said it looked like that for basically the entire time. So then it whistles again. And all of a sudden, he hears movement behind him. So he's in this tree stand, his back is against the tree. And behind him, he could hear faint, like it was 2 steps. And it wasn't like it was coming fast. It was like it was sneaking up on him. And so this thing is trying to distract him by smirking and kind of like taunting him, so this one behind him can get him. And so Mike is like, well, all right, I think it's time for me to try to make a run for it. So he gets down that stand, and he's running basically back to his truck through this little trail. And when he does that, this creature that was in front of him takes off into the brush, into the briars, and it's literally within 50 feet of him. And I forgot to mention this. This whole encounter is about 15 yards away. So basically almost a first down in football. That's not that far. And so this thing, he kind of goes off and juts off into the path, getting back to his truck. This thing goes into the briars, and it's mowing trees down, ripping trees up, and it's mowing. And he says that he could literally feel how close this thing is. And he gets to his truck. Or he's about to his truck, and he realizes, like, if I try to get my keys out of my pocket, open the door, unlock the door, or unlock the door, open the door, start the truck, this thing's going to bust through the thing and get me. So he takes a pop shot, just trying to, maybe distract it or something. And so he shoots, and this thing was probably about 8 foot tall. He shot about 7 foot, and it was about 3 feet away from that thing's face. And when he shot the tree, it almost was like an explosion of dust in this thing's face. And because it was a real old oak tree. And so they take off, he takes off, and he gets to the truck, and he takes off, and he's, going like smoking out of there, like just going crazy, like making sure he got out of there. And out of his rearview mirror, he saw one hand try to grab the tailgate, like it was going to climb in the truck. But luckily it missed. Like he said he could just see the fingers kind of like it was trying to grab it, but he took off and it missed. And so he said as he was, kind of taking off around the curve, because this is, like I said, it's a straight shot, but there's a curve toward when you get towards the end of it. He said he almost got to the curve and he could see there was another one. There was another one. And he had no idea it was right behind him the whole time. And that was the one he thinks that was the one that was trying to get into the truck, at the back of the truck. And he got out of there, and people asked him, it's one thing too that like when I listened to the interview, and he talked to some Eastern Band Cherokees about this. And basically they said that in that area, those Sasquatch, the Eastern Band believes that they can speak Cherokee and that they look Cherokee. And he did it like over the course of the years. He's done like artist sketches, and he's taken it to these different tribes, often like kind of on that in that area, And they're like, yeah, that looks Cherokee. Like there's some Cherokee blood in there. Dang, someone out here wilding out. In the words of Tyler Randall, Bigfoot's Wild Weekend Part 9. Nah. But or Omaha in that cave. Primal Rage. No, but yeah. So they said that it looks kind of Cherokee, and so I was like, man, that's kind of crazy, that he has kind of reached out to some tribes and he's told the tribes these stories. Well, he kind of goes to other Bigfoot researchers and they said, well, no, they were just bluff charging you. They were, and he tries to tell these people like, no, this thing tried to kill me. It tried to eat me. Like, no, these things were not playing. Like, they were not doing no trying to get you out of the area. Like, no. He said they were coming for me. And he thinks it all started, what started the interaction with them doing that was him when he pointed his rifle at him to look into the scope. And so, that's a famous Bigfoot story that's been around for, a while. I think that happened in the 90s. But Mike Wooley didn't really want to come out and say anything about it because you know how people are when you tell stories sometimes, or they don't believe you, or you're crazy, or but a lot of the stuff that he talks about, a lot of people have had those experiences with this creature. I've heard stories. I mentioned on the Navajo Ranger episode that they were beating on the doors, and they're beating on Brenda Harris's doors and trailer, and and they kind of they do things like that. And a story that comes to mind that was told to me not here recently from my parents. Kind of reminds me of kind of what that could be, or what something is. But my mom was born and raised in the country. That's basically all she knows. And she's been out in the woods her entire life and messing around, and she said the only time that I'm pretty spooked out at my parents' house. Like there's some weird things out there. And my mom's not really, she always likes to think, it could be this, could be that. Well, one night, my dad was watching TV, and he was in the living room. And you have the living room, and then right behind the couch is the back door that goes to the pasture. And it goes back out to the woods. Well, on the right-hand side, I think I've told this story before on Unsolved Mysteries of the Reservation, but off to the right, there's these woods, and there's a big old tree that you can see it at all those woods. That's right against the fence. One night she was laying there, and I think I was out of the house by that point, and they never told me this story. I guess maybe kind of creeped me out, but she was laying there watching TV, about to go to bed, and she said she thinks she saw someone trying to look into the window of the door. So basically, when you go out the back door, there's another door, and then you step further out, and then that's the tree line. Well, there's two doors, which is, I don't know why they did that, but there's two doors that lead into my parents' room and then into the living room. And they looked, and she said she looked, and she said she saw someone. It was someone big, like really big. Like she could see the outline of this thing, and it was monstrous. And it was trying to look in on them. Or her. She screamed. My dad, he's like, what's going on? There's somebody out there. He went out there and there was nobody there. And my mom always tries to say it was my dad. My dad was like, nah, I was sitting down in the living room with the TV on and the light was on. So they do things like that. I don't know what that was, but I was still, they're always messing around, messing with me, knocking on windows. But my dad he's kind of trickster like that, or kind of mess around. But these things do those type of things. Like I've heard, I've told the story before too, but I've heard, a story about my dad's best friend saw one night out there where the Cherokee Nation Casino is now, the big new nice one as you're coming into town on the right. There used to be a golf course out over there, and there was a road that went behind it. The road still goes behind it, I believe, or it's connected now, but yeah, it was basically all just hills, and it was an old golf course. And he saw something pass behind him real big and hairy. And they do those things to your mind. Mike Wooley did say, he kind of, when it grunted at him, kind of hit him with something. they do those things to your mind. They scramble you. They kind of make you lose your mind. And I think that's a part of what they do is, to stay kind of hidden and kind of stay protected is to do those things to people. And I know one of the biggest episodes I've done is the Bigfoot medicine. And if you want to kind of hear some more about the kind of that side of it, check that episode out. It's episode 2. It's called Bigfoot medicine. But it's really interesting though, that story about Mike Wooley, him kind of changing things up. And that's usually how, and that's one thing I notice about a lot of these stories that, people tell, or like when they see Sasquatch, is like they change the routine up. Like most times people go in the mornings and hunt, or they'll go in the evening times and they stick to that. But he didn't. And I thought that was real, kind of interesting when it comes to kind of where creatures of habit, but they are too. They could be, that could have been their hunting ground. That could have been that time of the day where they push game up through that game trail and get them. But like I said, guys, this is going to be the first part of a 2-episode drop. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find me on, let's see here. You can find me on Twitter too. I keep forgetting to drop my Twitter, but I just basically just retweeting sports and stuff, or OU football. And by the way, they will be back. But you guys can find me at One Man Band 918 on Twitter. The same handle for TikTok, One Man Band 918. On Facebook, Yahola Tiger. If you want to add me on Facebook, please send me a message. Tell me that you listen to either Unsolved or Warcry, and I'll add you on Facebook. I've had a few people do that. I appreciate y'all doing that. And I appreciate people that listen to both podcasts, because Unsolved Mysteries just dropped the Weeping Spirits. Not Weeping. I keep saying Weeping Spirits. It's Highway Ghost Stories and Highway Spirits. I thought that was pretty good. And there's some people talking about the Highway 9 and Dustin. I know some of y'all creeks got those stories. So if you got those stories, send them in. I take audio, like just basically do an audio, like, hey, this is my story. My name is blah blah blah. I want to be anonymous, and then shoot it off, and then tell your story, send it over to me, and like I said, I can put it into this podcast, or I can play it on the Unsolved podcast as well. So send your stories in. I know Unsolved, we are looking for college stories. So if you went to NSU, I know I got some NSU stories, Bacone, Haskell, IAIA, if you went to any type of college, Sequoia, Riverside, Anadarko. I know Darko got some stories. Any of those old stories like that, if you got them, send them in. But like I said, guys, I appreciate you listening in, and I'll catch you on the next one.